So it is tiebreak time in the last 16 of the Chess World Cup. Now I love the clash of styles which we saw today between Jan Nepomniachtchi, he was playing with white in this game, and Vidit Gujarati, he's playing with black here. Now on paper, Nepo's got the strength and he puts the pressure on the clock here as the stronger rated player and very much within his style. But Vidit, cool as a cucumber, just hangs in there and we get such a tense game on our hands. So Jan kicks off here with pawn c4. This is game 3. Their first 2 games were draws. They're now into another 2 games, 10 minutes on the clock, plus 10 seconds increment. We get knight f6, knight f3, e6, and Jan goes for this g3 stuff. So Vidit takes the centre, very principled, and after bishop g2, he fully takes the centre, very combative move. Pawn d4, yes, opens up the diagonal for this bishop long term, but gains the space. Always nice to have. So castles, knight c6 on the board. Love this move, leaving the c pawn at home. Maybe you go c6 later, blunt this bishop. And now d3, bishop c5, and this knight now spins round to attack this strong bishop. So we get castles, knight b3, the bishop drops back, losing time, but that's not the most beautiful knight. You know, it's not staring at any great squares, and it soon gets chased with this a pawn. Now we see e3 from Jan. Classic move, you have to fight against the black centre. And e5 is a very interesting response. It is playable, would have some kind of Benoni-like pawn structure, but instead we get takes on e3, the bishop recaptures, and after knight g4, looking to pick up that powerful piece, gain the bishop pair, whoops, misfire, now we get bishop c5. So an exchange occurs, this knight hops into a more advanced square, and now Vidit, you can tell he knows what he's doing. He plays pawn b6, which is one of the top 2 moves here, but it's risky, right? You know, he's treading on a tightrope, opening up this diagonal. Now in response, Jan does not move this knight, he goes knight back to d2. So immediately opening up his sniper, looking down this diagonal, and knight g to e5 was played because this one's also attacked. So it comes back, defends the other one, but this is quite a clumsy construction. You know, why can't you just go f4 immediately, for example? Chase this one away, then win this one. Yes, black can take here, but pawn structure's ruined. Well, now there's queen d4 check. The king moves and you can take on c5 with the queen. Not ruin your pawn structure, still cover this knight, and actually this is better for black. So coming back here, no f4 immediately. Jan drops back his knight, but he's now setting up all of these ideas of f4, win the piece. And you can't take here on d3 or you lose the knight. And if you take with the queen, still f4, still driving it away, still winning here. Plus there's rook c1 coming if you ever try and take here, not good. So instead, we get bishop b7 developing and now d4 played. And again, the pawn is immune here, or else you open up this attack, the bishop is undefended. So we get knight g6, hopping back from the attack, and now rook to e1 from Jan. Not technically the best move. He doesn't quite get these knights onto the right squares, because the computer here wants to go knight e4, spinning back to c3. And now we start to see the clumsiness of these knights with pawn to a5. Threat to go a4, so this knight now moves into f3, covers this pawn, but it does blunt the bishop, and now a4 on the board, knight c1, and pawn a3. Vidit runs that one all the way down and gains this amazing asset if we ever enter an endgame. So queen d6 now played. Technically not best, queen f6 was better, clearing the d-file for a rook to come and pressure. And now Jan finds a really interesting idea, but not the best one. So he should go knight to e2 to cover this pawn some more, improve that piece, but he plays knight to d3. He gives this pawn here, so what's his idea? Vidit snaps it off. Well, after knight recaptures, bishop takes on g2, he doesn't immediately take back, he flicks in this knight takes on e6 move, attacking the rook, so Vidit captures back that knight, which is the best move, And now Jan takes here. Why would he go for all this? Well, he's saying, okay, I've ruined your pawn structure here, materials level, but I can now gang up on the e6 pawn. I should be a bit better. But what he's underestimated is Vidit's initiative, which now starts to build, because this knight is clumsily placed. There's no easy way to defend it. You can't move it to any good square. Then queen c6 check could be coming as well, picking up the queen. So rook e3 is forced to defend that knight, but now great move by Vidit of knight to e7. And in the studio, Jovanka was talking about the fact that when you're not sure which piece to improve, look for one that's got the highest value. So a knight is worth 3, a pawn is worth 1, because there was an option to go e5 there. And so you could make a case for, okay, improve the 3-point piece, not the 1-point piece. Quite an interesting one. I've not heard that one before. Now queen g4 from Jan, not the best move. Queen e2 was better to break the pin, still cover the knight. And now Vidit misses a trick here because he could have started with a check. And this is really powerful. You can't block with the rook, or else you're running into a tactic of rook takes on d3. If you block with, check. If you block with the pawn, equally not good because knight f5's coming, still huge pressure. And if you play the best move of, check, king g1, well now knight f5, you hit this rook, and after it moves to f3, now you've got rook d4, and there's no rook f4 or the knight drops here. This is a huge initiative which is now building. White should lose material. But what we see in the game is knight to f5 played, the rook comes across to f3 now, and now when you flick in queen c6, there's no check, there's no king retreat, so now white's just got time for knight to e5. The queen is hit, slides back to a8, and you can break the pin with king to g1. Black's still better, and rook d4 is a decent move, but this time white's got rook to f4, not as powerful as before. Rook d2 on the board, things are roughly level, but black's the one with the pressure, because after knight f3, hitting the rook on d2, we get rook to b2, and look at the pressure on this pawn. If it ever drops, how dangerous is that one going to be? So Jan goes knight g5, looking for the counterplay. We get queen c6, covers the pawn. Rook e1 intensifies the pressure, but does leave this pawn unprotected now. Rook f6 defends, and now queen d1, a nice retreating move, looking to check on the back rank. So h6 played to give the king some room, also pressures the knight. Now there was a really interesting queen sack line here with queen d8 check, and if the rook blocks, it goes like this. You take with check. That way you also pick up a knight, so you've got knight, rook and pawn for the queen, technically level, but still the problem is this pawn dropping. And actually black is better here because this isn't any kind of mating attack, and this pawn is really dangerous. So that one was not played, no queen d8 check. Jan just retreats the knight, he hits the rook on f6, it drops back to f8, and now g4, aggressive move, and sets a trap. Often when you see this come on the board, you want to play in here, look for this kind of check stuff. But the problem here is white snaps off the rook, king recaptures, check, and you're about to pick up the knight at the end of the line. No good, white is winning. So instead, knight d6, best move, blocks that queen coming down the d file. We see rook takes with check, king recaptures, and now Nepo, he goes wrong here. Just not feeling the position and not using enough time. Look at his clock, he's trying to put the pressure on. So what he should do is knight c3, cover this pawn and keep the knights on the board, keep some attacking chances at the black king. But what he does instead is chop off this knight, this queen recaptures, and now he goes for check. But this endgame is not good, again because this rook is just super powerful on the second and hitting that pawn. We get the queen sliding back, hits the g7 pawn, the king covers, we get some repetition. Is Vidit going to take the draw? Well, no, he steps back to g8, fighting on, realising the power of this endgame. So rook d1 hits the black queen, it slides back to the f-file, and now the queen sidesteps. Nepo doesn't want to exchange, he wants to keep attacking, pressures this pawn, and here Vidit just snaps that one off, says take this pawn if you want, so what, I'm going to hide with my king, and then my a pawn starts running, plus I'm converging on here with my queen and rook. Really tough endgame, should be lost. So instead, Jan goes for g5, trying to rip open the king, stir things up, but this is actually a blunder because Vidit finds the brilliant response of queen to f5, ignoring this threat, because if you do that immediately, there's queen g4 check, you pick up an entire rook. And actually if takes, yeah, you're taken with check, so you don't need to worry about the checkmate. So coming back here, we get Nepo flicking in this check, the king moves, now he takes on h6, and Vidit throws in this check with the rook. The king steps up, that's check, and it would be mate if not for the queen blocking. So this forces off the queens. Pawn recaptures, Vidit calmly takes, and this endgame is so instructive, because when the rook comes behind the pawn, we now see the fact that Nepo is completely paralysed. This pawn pushes on, the king marches, but look at this for a move. Rook a7 and e4 check. You cannot take the pawn, completely immune, or black simply gives this check. Then the pawn runs through and we reach this position dead lost. Even though the king gets active, by the way, this rook's just too well placed. You know, this is a sample line. These pawns completely blocked off. The king's going to win these and the g pawn runs. So coming back here, we see the king meekly stepping back to g2. King f6, g4, g5, pawn c6, and now king e6. Where's this king heading? Well, all the way around to the queen side, and Nepo just resigns. There's no point playing on. What can he actually do? King c4, what do? Wait with the rook. King marches in, wait with the rook. You know, it comes all the way down, you move your rook away, you make a new queen, and white just can't fight against the plan. You know, coming back here, if you try and step anywhere with the king, whoops, whose move? Say it's white's move, you try and step anywhere with the king, you know, you've simply got this check and the pawn's going through. Hopeless endgame. So Vidit, congratulations to him, wins this one. Nepo then played something very speculative to try and come back with the black pieces. He had to, but he couldn't do it. Vidit went on to win that one, and he takes the tie breaks, goes through to the quarterfinals. Another Indian player in the quarters. What a phenomenal year that Indian players are having at the World Cup. I hope you enjoyed this one. Do check out the video on screen for another epic game, and I hope to see you again on a future video. Thanks very much for watching.